reactions, which are often under the influence of environmental conditions. We have still to learn a lot of that. Symbiosis has been widely ignored. Only since 1 or 2 decades, we microbiologists talk about that and making aware that we human beings, the same as other animals, same as plants, are full of different kinds of bacteria, which don't make these host organisms sick. I don't suffer from these bacteria. They help me, and I help them to maintain them. Symbiosis. This is an important thing and renders, in fact, gives a higher degree of complexity to living beings than we had expected about 50 years ago when the genetic code was determined, and one believed that everything was known at that time. So we see that living beings depend on other living beings. They depend on found habitats and can adapt to various habitats, sometimes thanks to cohabitation with others. And we see that because of the possibility of horizontal gene transfer and for other reasons, that in fact future developments are possible by a high number of possibilities, by developing genetic information internally in a genome, or by exchanging information between different kinds of organisms. The same is true for habitats. Habitats, of course, are on the slow move. We shouldn't believe that the habitats which we find nowadays are still the same in 10 million years. They may be considerably different. The absolutely almost incredible and beauty of what we see, how nature works, from the point of view of scientific knowledge, we call that a self-organization, which has brought it here, and if we don't destroy that self-organization, it can continue for long periods of time. We have to, as scientists, we have to be careful that this kind of view of nature is not misinterpreted by lay people, like those thinking that intelligent design is actually the source of all that what we see. It may appear intelligent, but that's a human thinking. Nature is not having that kind of intelligence. It just works for reasons which we are far from understanding yet in a good way. Then cultural values is also are seen in technological applications of scientific knowledge, and these applications can be both to the benefit of mankind on the one hand, but also to the benefit of the environment, so that this long-term evolution, which is possible on our planet, is not interrupted. Of course, we are aware that it's only about 10,000 years ago that early human beings started to make agricultural cultures. People felt that what they found in the environment, providing food for their daily requirements, could be cultivated. And what we see nowadays are, of course, and this is not so good, not so high sustainable, these monocultures, large fields on which everything is destroyed except the culture which you want to grow. So that's a problem with nowadays agriculture. And possibilities which has been envisaged by genetic engineering methodology is to ameliorate that a certain number of generally used food plants, a certain number, 1 or 2 dozen, would probably do it, to genetically modify such by just putting in genetic resources found already in nature in other living beings, could provide means to ameliorate our daily diets and also contribute to a sustainable long-term development of nature. We had in our academy a workshop which Ingo Potricus, together with Raven, had organized on genetic engineering, and I think the example of golden rice is really a kind of a good example. In future times, it should be possible to enrich those food crops with genetic information just from a few sources to make it, on the one hand, healthier themselves during their growth and their storage, that they are not rotten so easily as today. That's one thing. And the second thing would be to render it more rich for our daily requirement of food uptake. The right number of vitamins and so on, and all the elements. Also rare elements as iron, that I think could be done, and I had at other occasions proposed a roadmap, thinking that this will not be possible from one year to the next, but within a few decades, upcoming decades, and it would probably require and would be most efficient if there are public-private partnerships, including science, of course, economy, the drivers also, they want to earn some money from doing that, and civil society represented by politics. So that is something which we should try to propagate within our society in a relatively efficient way. In doing that, we should try to fully respect, or almost fully respect, I must say, the laws of nature, which in the meantime we have identified. And applied that rule to genetic engineering, we know that rates of mutations, of course, are rare. If human beings do it, it's more efficient. But what we should respect is to do it in small steps, as nature does it. Small steps means, I usually compare the genome of a plant or of animals with encyclopedias of several hundred volumes, and genetic engineering can nowadays apply that in taking at most one or a few pages from one of these volumes and putting it in another encyclopedia somewhere where it's useful. And of course, all of these constructs will be submitted by nature to natural selection, according to Darwin, and if it functions, all the better. If it doesn't function, you have to try another way to do it. Yes, I should come to some conclusions. Sustainability. You have sustainability in the title of my talk, and I like to also give you some definition on what that means in that context, which I try to explain to you. We should abstain from seriously disturb the natural equilibrium which we find. That means we cannot just, for example, I just give you an example, transfer natural habitats which are not agriculturally used today into large fields of monoculture, agricultural culture. That would be a dramatic impact. So we should be aware that we must provide means to use in future times, nature can use in future times, the rich genetic resources which are available in our encountered rich biological diversity. And the same is true for habitats, living conditions for living beings, both on the surface and in the deepness of the crust of the earth. This poses a problem to me. I'm aware that during our lifetime, the number of human beings on this planet has considerably increased. Thanks to better medical care, thanks to living conditions which are more appropriate, we certainly are very pleased to see that we have longer periods of life in the average. But that means that in order to, and lifetimes and habitats, if we wanted to have habitats for all kinds of living beings, we shouldn't expect to transfer surfaces of the planet into just habitats for human beings and for a few food plants and animals. That would be a wrong strategy. And that means the Club of Rome and other organizations have already contributed to that knowledge of human population should sooner or later come to a certain equilibrium with the rest of nature. The planet is not growing, there are not more habitats being produced, so we should find ways really to adapt to that and trying to reach tolerable population density, providing a good life to all of these human beings, remediating malnutrition, hunger, which is still existing, and that would be, in fact, an important thing to propagate and envisage. That will probably need some good programs of education, and I'm pleased to see that our academy also cares for thinking about what education can do to our life on this planet. We should try to stimulate that existing gaps of available knowledge could be filled by appropriate research programs, and the whole thing should be guided by trying to reach a long-term means billions of years sustainability of further propagating life on this planet and the appropriate habitats. Thank you for your attention.